Hi guys, hope you're all okay. Welcome to this new video. Today I'm just going to show what I consider to be some of the most classic and groundbreaking horror films of all time. Of course I know I could have shown a few more in this video, but I still think I picked out a fine selection of classics to show in this video. All these films are absolute must-sees. So here we go, let's start with some classic silent horror cinema. First one is The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. Absolute classic film, made way back in 1919. I mean, the sets in this film are just amazing, really surreal. It's a great film, really ahead of its time. Great twist too. Next is Nosferatu, another absolute favourite of mine. Has always been my favourite vampire film. It's an absolute masterpiece as far as I'm concerned. Another one is the Golem, another absolute classic. Essential viewing really for horror fans. Another favourite of mine is Vampira, a total masterpiece as far as I'm concerned. This film is just amazing, really kind of surreal, stylish, artistic film, way ahead of its time. Next is Phantom of the Opera. This one, of course, with Lon Chaney from 1925, I think. Absolute classic silent film, essential viewing for all fans. Right, next I'm going to show some of the classic Universal horror films. First off is my favourite one, Frankenstein. I mean, you haven't seen this film then, you know, where have you been really? It's an absolute classic of horror, love it. And then also The Mummy, Boris Karloff, another absolute classic. Also Dracula, Bela Lugosi, another total classic. And here we have White Zombie, really groundbreaking film. I could probably also include I Walk with a Zombie, but I've only included this one. It's an absolute classic, really atmospheric, about 1930 odd. Then, absolute classic too, the original King Kong. Everyone knows about this film, everyone's seen it. Absolute classic. And then a real groundbreaking film, I consider Freaks. Todd Browning, from the director of Universal Dracula, this is. And this is his masterpiece in my opinion. This film is amazing. Yeah, just really good. The ending of this film is just really breathtaking, you know, when all the freaks are kind of sort of approaching to kill that man and woman. This is like revenge obviously, and it's all set in the pouring rain. It's just an absolute classic moment in horror cinema, love it. Then The Spiral Staircase for me, which I think is really underrated, doesn't get talked about that much, but great expressionist horror bits in this film, really atmospheric, great film. Couple of the Hammer horrors I'll show. Horror of Dracula, total classic, Christopher Lee, Peter Cushing, and also the version of The Mummy. You could also include The Curse of Frankenstein in this. Next real groundbreaking film is Blood Feast, of course known as probably the first gore film ever. You know, early 60s this was made, and you know, scalps get cut off, tongues get ripped off. You know, it's a real classic film of its time, really gory for back then, very important film, Blood Feast. And also Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, absolute classic, real groundbreaking film, influenced so much. Next is Night of the Living Dead. You know, need I say any more about this one? You know, Romero pretty much writes the whole rules of the zombie genre in this, absolute classic. And also Dawn of the Dead, where he kind of almost improves on it. And obviously after this one, that's when the zombie films really took off, really exploded. So many others came after, absolute masterpiece. Then we've got Jaws, Steven Spielberg of course, still his best film by far in my opinion. It's an absolute classic, first sort of summer type blockbuster. and also basically really kind of inspired so many of the kind of creature feature monster movies to come after. You know, When Nature Strikes type films. It's a classic. Then The Exorcist, had to include this one. Probably one of the most sort of powerful, disturbing films when it came out at the time. Really scary, really creepy film. It's an absolute classic. As to this, Last House on the Left, one of the first that really kind of, you know, really showed that really kind of brutal aspect of horror. Pretty grim film for its time, definitely. Great film. Also, I Spit on Your Grave, had to include that. Yeah, another one which showed the real kind of depravity of horror of film. And also Cannibal Holocaust, and also Salo, 120 Days of Sodom. Pretty much got to be both the sort of granddaddies of the extreme horror cinema. Both classics, loved them. Next we've got The Girl Who Knew Too Much, which Mario Bava, of course, pretty much the first giallo film, even though it does have the feel of a kind of just like a Hitchcock type thriller as well, but it does have a few giallo elements. So real important film. But this next one though, Blood and Black Lace, is the absolute most groundbreaking giallo film of all time. Mario Bava again. Pretty much everything was set in place for the genre with this film. Absolute classic. And next, Bird of Crystal Plumage, Dario Argento, of course, where he uses sort of Mario Bava's templates, but does it his own way, kind of does a few things different, and of course the success of this film pretty much made an absolute explosion of the giallo film. So many came out on its wake after, and for that I'll be forever grateful. Classic films. Next, I had to show Mario Bava's Bathed Blood. Awesome film, of course, but pretty much the first very influential for the body count films that were to come in the 70s and 80s. And a couple of scenes in this were actually taken and used in Friday the 13th Part 2, directly stolen from it, of course. A couple of the killings. Absolute classic body count film, Bathed Blood. Next, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Had to have this one in. Another one really sort of grim, sort of gritty, disturbing horror film with kind of slasher, proto-slasher elements. I think classic film. Also Black Christmas, another classic kind of proto-slasher, really important film again. And of course Halloween, another one, successful, great film, really important film, you can't argue with that. And last one I'll show is Friday the 13th. Of course the success of this film really inspired the many slashes that were to come in the 1980s after. Really important film, classic film too. So I'm going to leave it there. I've just gone up to about 1980 really, but this is all what I consider to be classic, groundbreaking films right up to 1980. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Take it easy.